John Carlos Boose, the man found guilty of killing his wife in 2015, tells a judge Friday that his lawyer failed him and he deserves a new trial. 23 News reporter Jim Haggerty was in court and has more on this request.
Zoe, John Carlos Boose testified that his public defender didn't do enough to suppress a video of his interrogation. Now, he believes on that video, a police officer violated his Miranda rights.
To proceed on an ineffective assistance of counsel claim, there's a two-part test.
Ella Bucko isn't involved in the murder case against John Carlos Boose, but the experienced criminal defense attorney says the bar is significantly high for anyone who claims their lawyer didn't represent them effectively at trial.
The first part is that the attorney fell objectively below reasonable standards.
That's what John Carlos Boose says happened to him. Boose was convicted of beating his wife, Regina Poe, to death 8 years ago. He says a recording of his police interrogation contained a Miranda rights violation and that his public defender should have moved to suppress that video. If Judge Randy Wilt agrees with that claim, Boose would still face another hurdle.
And the second part is that that failure caused an ineffective trial or an ineffective defense for the individual.
Winnebago County Assistant State's Attorney Allison Meeson disputes Boose's claim, showing in court Friday a document Boose signed agreeing to the use of the recording with the alleged Miranda rights violation redacted.
We feel that the verdict did reflect the evidence that was presented at trial.
Boose also claims police mishandled evidence and that his right to a speedy trial was violated at least 3 times.
Boose's public defender is scheduled to testify June 30th about the recording of Boose's interrogation.